Hey everyone!
Good evening.
Good evening. We are so excited to be able to join you tonight. We took a little bit of a break and now we're back. So we're on actually episode 8, which is hard to believe. So we're really excited to be able to do that. And tonight we're going to be talking about how do you talk to yourself. A lot of the time we have negative self-talk, and this really affects our results and the way that we want to live. If we want to live a no more someday life, then we have to talk to ourselves in a different way.
Definitely. I think it's probably one of the things that we don't think about a lot of the times, and it's not necessarily something that you're brought up to learn about, at least in my experience. It's not something that gets talked about very often, and yet it has such a big impact because If you think about it, you talk to yourself more than anybody else.
Yes.
You're talking to yourself, and we're talking about your thoughts, even, conversations you have with yourself 24/7 pretty much. And sometimes we don't realize that so much because it's second nature and it's just part of our day, but we are really having an ongoing dialogue and conversation with ourselves every day, all day. And so that's why it's so important on what we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah, and this is, like Matt said, it's not really like a class in school that you take. Maybe you would have it in some interaction, but it's usually not something that's typically talked about. And so we wanted to start out by saying, like, why is self-talk important? And I think we've kind of, covered that you're talking to yourself all the time, but what you tell yourself really affects your actions and your beliefs. It starts with beliefs and then it turns into actions. And when we started putting this together, I was immediately brought back to this quote that a dear mentor of mine gave me in this little card a long time ago. It says, watch your thoughts, they become words. Watch your words, they become actions. Watch your actions, they become habits. Watch your habits, they develop character. Watch your character, it determines your destiny. And I know it sounds maybe a little cliche, but it's seriously so true. And especially as Christians, we want to watch these things too. And, what we're saying to ourselves, the kind of thoughts that we have, even the words that we choose when we are speaking about ourselves is really important. So we're really speaking life or death over ourselves, all the time, and we have to really be careful and take inventory about how we are really talking to ourselves, because if I think I can't do something, if I have a certain belief, then I'm speaking in and confirming that belief, and then I will either take an action or not take an action based on that belief. So then the second thing we were going to talk about is, okay, now what are the effects of self-talk? Whether it's positive or negative. Actions are a big thing, or inaction. If you have, for example, a health goal, you're not going to take actions on that because you may believe that you're never going to get to your goal, and so you speak some words that are, negative over yourself about that, and then that'll have an effect on whether you take action and make healthy choices or not.
Yeah, I think the positive effects, of course, are if you do have that positive routine, that positive dialogue with yourself, then it's really going to open up a lot of possibilities for where your life is going to go, whether or not you're going to be able to do the things that you said you want to do versus the things that you maybe are more distant reaching, or you don't understand exactly, or you say you want to do them, but because of the negative patterns that you have, the self-talk you have, aren't going to allow you to fulfill that. So being able to talk to yourself positively really affects and allows you to do the things you want to do. And I think one thing that's really important is a lot of times we may not even realize where the negative self-talk begins, but it has to have begun somewhere.
Yes.
And most likely it began with somebody close to you telling you, you're not this, or you can't do this. I can remember things with people close to me, not necessarily family, but people that I respected, who would say something negative to me, and that became a pattern for years and years of my life. And it was something that just one word, one sentence that somebody said to me when I was younger, and that became, I internalized that, and then what they said became my voice. And then you amplify that by the thousands of times that I've said that to myself over years and years. Mm-hmm. So it's so important that we're able to counteract those negative things from other people with our own self-talk, because we can't control what other people think or say about us, but we can control what we say and think about ourselves. And so we have to really build up that strength, that mental awareness and ability to counteract those things, whether it's from well-meaning people, whether it's from people who are really trying to take shots at us, whatever that might look like. Regardless of what people are saying, we have to be able to have that ability to withstand that and still have that right attitude about ourselves.
Yeah, and you think about it definitely along those same lines, Matt. You know, it took us a while to get there, you know, like it wasn't like somebody just spoke that over us and we maybe immediately believed that. Sometimes it's years of us saying the same negative statement to ourselves, and so it takes a while to kind of undo that, right? It's not like going to be an immediate result of, okay, now I suddenly don't believe that. So it is going to take some time. If you think about, you know, a positive effect for self-talk, it could be that, you know, it's going to take a while to create a new belief, because you've had such a belief that's been so ingrained in you. And this makes me think about like your neural pathways, which if you don't know anything about that, like it's kind of fun to look that up and like learn about that. What is the book that we love about that? Trying to remember.
I don't know, but I mean, it's basically like a very simple analogy is like a path that you walk down, and if you've done any hiking or whatever, you can tell immediately, has this trail been walked down very often?
Right,
and
exactly.
So I think we maybe even mentioned this before, but the more you walk down that path, the harder it gets, and this is for positive or negative. The more you build that neural pathway, the more you walk down it, it's going to get stronger and stronger. And so you have to kind of let that one alone and let it grow over and create the new neural pathway that you continue to walk down, because that's
right.
our brain is opting into that path of least resistance, if you will.
Right.
And we should be making those good neural pathways as opposed to the ones that unfortunately we tend to build up over a long time that are just our minds automatically go to very quickly.
Yes.
And we don't even,
They're
maybe we're going to
strong.
question this,
Strong
we're going to
path.
talk about this in a minute, but we don't even question them anymore. We just accept that as reality when
Exactly.
It's not necessarily.
Exactly, yeah. And so the stronger that they are, our brain wants to do the least amount of work. It's just going to keep going down those roads and down those roads over and over and over again. So it's pretty, important that we make sure that these are really good beliefs and really good thoughts that we're having. But when we are changing this, remember, it's going to take some time. So if this is something that you want to work on, which we've both been working on this, we're continuing to work on this. We even comment on each other. Like sometimes I'll say something or Matt will say something, and that's indicating what's going on in our head. Like if you really listen to what people say, sometimes you can kind of pick up on what's going in their head, because they're like, oh, I can't do that, or oh, I'm unable to do that, or there's no way I have time for that. But that's a belief that they've created, and that's what they're reaffirming in their head. So sometimes we'll be like, oh, hey, wait, think about what that sounds like. Are those the words you really want to be saying to yourself and speaking over yourself? Because words truly have power in our lives. Just like I was talking about at the beginning with my little card. So let's talk about some tips and some ways that we can really implement it and like kind of dig deep. And before we start this, I really want to say to you that, you know, with this whole no more some days mindset, we're wanting to do something that's, if you're wanting to take this journey with us, that's kind of, outside the norm. Most people are saying someday, well, someday we'll do this, and, and they don't really have a plan, and they're not really working that plan of action. So by changing your thoughts, and kind of going outside of those normal patterns of thinking, you're going to be helping yourself on this journey. It's an important part of this journey is what we're saying, because instead of having that neural pathway that says someday, 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 you're saying, no, I'm actually going to make a path. I'm going to take one more step today to get closer to my goal and my dream of the someday. So one of the first things we talked about when we were chatting about this was journaling, like just getting out a journal, or you could do voice memo, whatever, type it out, however you want to do it. But just like journaling out, okay, what are some like repetitive problems and challenges that you face a lot that you're like going over in your head again and again? And then maybe going back to the root and looking at them and going, okay, what is the belief or the thought behind this challenge, problem, issue that I'm having, because that might be the root, or that is the root of what's going on. Because if I change my belief, then that's gonna help me to change that issue in my life. I'm gonna start doing something about it. For example, our lawn is nowhere near where I want it to be right now. And if I just keep thinking, I can't do it, I don't have time, all that stuff, and it keeps recurring in my brain, then I think, oh, there's no way that I can do anything about that. But if I challenge that and I say, no, I can do something once a week where I spend an hour outside, that's something I can do, and I can start to get to the root of what the real issue is there. I haven't really made a plan is really what the issue is there, but do you have anything else to chime in about that?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. The next one is when you're creating your new statement. So one thing you can do as well is, journal out some things that are negative, right? And things that you're having, thoughts that you don't like, and creating a new thought. And so we were thinking of an example with like maybe somebody who is struggling with their weight. And, it's easy to think, I am fat, or I am overweight, or I am obese, whatever you want to have your I am statement about that. But it's not enough to say like, oh, I am not obese, because your brain tends to not really hear the not. It's just like, what was the example that I gave? Like, if you say, don't touch that, or
don't touch a stove or something.
Something like that, immediately you want to touch the stove, like it's like that kind of thing. And so we were thinking of ways to help you create like new thoughts. And so one way is to not use the word not in there. And so journaling out and then putting the opposite, what are some negative thoughts you can just journal out? What are some negative thoughts that I'm having? What are some negative things I'm saying to myself? And then putting the opposite. Anything that you wanted to jump in on with that?
I mean, I think you have to begin to really question these things that you're saying to yourself. So, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of times we've just accepted these as part of our lives, and we've stopped questioning them anymore. So whether it's I'm not healthy, or I'm not going to get a promotion, well, really, you have to confront those thoughts and really, well, am I really never going to get a promotion? Well, that's probably not the case. So instead of that, now I can shift to what can I do to get a promotion? What can I do to get another job I want? Well, okay, I'm not healthy where I want to be, but am I always not going to be healthy? Well, no, there's some things I can do to really shift that. So really questioning those things that you're saying to yourself, and really, putting them on trial is another way to think about it. Really put them on the stand and say, is this really true?
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's not. And sometimes we like to use these things as, it's almost a way, again, our brain wants to be the easiest, the path of least resistance. And so if we accept this and keep going, then there's no responsibility to change. There's no responsibility to do something different. So if I continue to accept these, I'm not good enough, I'm not healthy enough, I'm never going to be enough, well, then there's no responsibility for me to change anymore, because that's just who I am. And so we really have to shift that dialogue and really put those thoughts on trial to really see what the truth is.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking truth over yourself, I think even too, like, if you're saying something, like I used to say this horrible thing over myself, which was I want to murder myself, which just sounds like really horrible. Like, it's embarrassing to even admit that. But, when I look at, I am fearfully and wonderfully made, like God, specifically made me and crafted me in my mother's womb. And for me to say something like that to myself is just, it's so sad and demeaning. And we wouldn't even talk to our friends the way that we sometimes talk to ourselves. When they're having a hard time and they're down or facing a challenge, we wouldn't be saying like, how dare you, you're terrible, all these things where we speak that sort of thing over ourselves, and often it's false information. It's not even true. It's not even that truth. And so one thing I was even suggesting too in this, and when we were going over some notes, is like, if you are a Christian, like sitting down and reading in God's word, like what the truth is about you and how God sees you, and you are worthy and you are made in his image. And so when you're starting to speak that truth of yourself and say, like, objectively put it on trial, is this really true? because scripture says otherwise, you know? And one thing we were thinking of too is like, Matt had this cool quote on his story. What was it? Like change, instead of I can't.
Oh, instead of I can't change that to I can't yet.
Yeah,
I'm not able to yet.
Right. So like just changing the story to, okay, this isn't going to be forever. It's not permanent.
Well, yeah, that's the first thing you have to do if you're firmly set in a certain mindset is instead of, you got to, again, challenge that belief and not let yourself off the hook. Because if I'm trying to run a marathon and I've never ran before, I can't run a marathon right now. That's the truth. But that then lets me off the hook. I need to change that to I can't yet. So now that opens up the possibility for I can't run a marathon yet, but I can walk 20 minutes today, and I can work out, and I can eat healthier. And so then when you don't let yourself off the hook, then you take responsibility and accountability for actions to get you back to that point, to the thing that you're wanting to do.
It's like a pivot moment, you know? It's like instead of saying there's nothing I can do, and like you said, you know, letting yourself off the hook, it's like, okay, I'm going to choose to start taking responsibility, and I'm going to choose to focus on and speak over myself something that I can control and that is attainable. It's not like you're saying, I'm going to go run a marathon tomorrow. It's, okay, I can run the 20 minutes, or I can follow a plan. I can download the 5K app and start there and do whatever the exercises, follow that plan as I go. Like that was me about this time last year. I decided I wanted to run a 5K. And so I started training, and I can't remember if it was September or October, and I just started to believe that I could do it. And then now I've been training for a 10K, and so you just have to start believing you can do it. And I just chose to change my belief that I could do it and start following a plan. And it literally can be that simple, but it's so easy to let ourselves off the hook and not take responsibility for some of these things that we actually could change. And so part of this No More Someday lifestyle that we've chosen to embrace is we're gonna take responsibility for what we can control, instead of sitting here saying, I can't, or there's no way, or it's impossible, or I'm a victim mindset is really what we're talking about here, right? So this really brings us to like the whole conversation of, and we've kind of been dancing around this already, of like affirmations. And I know there's different levels of understanding when it comes to this, but what are some keys for you with affirmations that we haven't really touched on yet?
Well, I mean, just to back up, I mean, an affirmation is something you're saying about yourself is in a positive way, like I am successful, I am healthy, I am intelligent. Usually you want to structure them towards something that you're struggling with, or you're, like we talked about at the beginning, is kind of opposite of what your current pattern is. But I think, you know, the goal is to change your subconscious from these negative thoughts to the more positive side of things and how you see yourself. And so you'll see a lot of different theories on how to do this, but I think one thing for me at least is there is magic, there is something very tactile, very real about hearing an affirmation in your own voice. So a lot of people, you write them down, which is good and is a good start, but if you really want to take it to the next level, at least a level that I think brings it more real is saying it out loud. Yeah. And hearing it in your voice, whether that's a recording you do so you can play on your way to work, or whether it's you just saying it in the car to yourself, or even better and hard to do is saying it in the mirror. Mm-hmm. Because when you're face to face with yourself and you don't feel like you're worthy, and you don't feel like you're healthy, you don't feel like anybody loves you, you don't feel like you're successful, you don't feel like you're going to get a promotion, it's hard to look in your eyes and say those things. And that's kind of the point, though, because you need to, again, what we've talked about, confront yourself and begin to shift your mindset. Yeah. So I think it's really important that you have, one, I think consistency, doing it consistently. You can't do these once a week. If you really want to see a market improvement, just like anything, it has to become a habit. And then if you really want to make it the most effective, you hear it in your voice, you say it out loud, and because then you have to have that meaning.
Yes.
Because if you're just saying I'm worthy, I'm so amazing, like that doesn't, you don't believe it. Like I wouldn't believe that. Is it believable or not? You have to say it like you believe it.
Yeah.
And then I think another step is saying it in the mirror and actually confronting yourself and seeing yourself. And that's, we've referenced that book, but Love Yourself Like Your Life Depended on It talks a lot about this and really gets into it on a deeper level. Really seeing yourself and loving you for not just who you are, but who you're becoming. The better version of yourself that you're becoming is extremely powerful, I think.
Yeah, and some other ways, I love all those suggestions. Some other ways to do this is posting them around your home. I have these in certain areas of our house. Another thing to do, I love that, recording it in your own voice. There's a really cool app called Think Up. It's just one word, Think Up. And it's great. You can record a ton of them in your own voice. You can listen to them with music or sound effects. And it's really a great way to, start your day or end your day. Saying them multiple times a day can be great. Start with something attainable though. Don't choose like 50 affirmations and you're like, oh my goodness, I can't, this is too much. Start with 3, start with 5, and choose specific times a day. Set a timer. I have a reminder on my phone to say them. Different things like that can be a good way that just triggers your brain to get used to saying them. Something I've been doing, I've been saying them out loud. I say them 3 times in a row right now. That's just something that I've been starting to do. And I started playing them with certain types of music because if it's something like from a movie or something where it's like a really inspiring moment, it starts to get you a physical reaction. You actually want to make this on a physicality level as much as possible. So I love that, like looking in the mirror, looking yourself in the eye, or even just having an inspiring music that helps you really make it physical as much as possible. And then you start to do this really cool thing where you start to actually picture it in your brain and visualize what that's going to look like, what that's going to feel like, who's going to be there, what are the smells, what are the sounds, what kind of energy is going to be in the room, whose lives are you impacting? Are you seeing their faces? Is the crowd going wild? Like, what does that look like for you? I was imagining today, like the faces of these kids that are going to be at like the music camp that I would love to put together, or, people that I could visit and helping with different work, gospel, helping to spread the gospel all over the world and meeting with different people who are, spreading the gospel in other countries or just, Christians in other countries that I've never met before. And it just, having that reach and being able to visit with them and see them, look them face to face and put my arms around them. Hopefully hopefully all this COVID stuff is going to be over, and really making it like a real thing, like that you feel the warmth, that you see the images, the colors, the textures. Another thing is like the trip I mentioned before that my mom and I want to take to Montana, or Matt and I having a second home in Chattanooga, and really feeling what is that going to look like? What's that going to smell like? Who's going to be there? Who's going to be celebrating with you? And feeling that and seeing that, I think brings a whole new effect to it. And when you start to act as if, it really helps your body to kind of catch up to that, is what we're saying. But we're not asking you to leap to something that's not believable. It does still need to be believable, attainable truth. It's not like, you're going to go run a marathon tomorrow if you haven't been running, nothing like that. We want to emphasize that because you've got to really make it, something that your brain can grasp and believe, because ultimately, like Matt said, on a subconscious level, we have created this set of beliefs, and we have to work to kind of really hard to change those beliefs. Because they're not going to change themselves. You don't stumble in to a goal, you don't just happen to reach a goal usually. You have to work, you have to be really intentional, and that starts with your mind.
Yeah, and I think if you thought about it, if you took some time to think about it, you've probably done this in your life. just think about something you've accomplished that you really wanted.
Yeah.
You've probably done some of these steps, maybe not the exact way, but you've done it, you visualized it, you went after it, you dreamed, and you accomplished it. Now we're just saying bring that even into more reality and in other aspects of your life. Because you have these tools. There's something anybody can do. And I think, like Megan said, it's really important. The more senses you can bring into that, the more powerful it's going to be, whether it's taste, feel, smell, sound, all of those. The more you can add to that affirmation, to that goal, the more it's going to anchor that, and the more it's going to seem attainable, and probably the faster and the easier it's going to be for you to get to where you're wanting to go with that affirmation or that goal. The more senses you can bring into that picture.
Wouldn't you even say like that you could even find pictures of things, like even if you haven't been to that place or
of course.
whatever?
Yeah.
Like a picture of the car or a picture of the house or a picture of your family or that outfit. I mean, it could be anything, even if you haven't gotten there. Like, this is going to sound kind of funny. I don't know if I told you this, but like when we lived in Indiana, and it was our last few months there, it was so cold. Like, it was so cold. And I'd be walking Zan, that's our dog if you're not familiar, and we'd be out there and I'd be freezing my nubs off, and I would just picture waking up in the morning, and my in-laws, their bathroom has this like really awesome big window, and I had been to their house multiple times, so I knew that window, and I knew looking out on their street, there's these beautiful trees, and it's just like this beautiful sight that you have in front of you. And so I would imagine waking up and looking out that window, like if you can have something that you can picture in your mind, it's just so helpful,
Yeah, definitely.
It just makes it that much more real, brings it into the present, because we really do want you to bring this as much into the present so that you're really helping your mind to see, okay, this is possible. This is something that you can go after. It's a big step toward the right direction. And I think something that, and we didn't really talk about this much, so I'm kind of springing it on you, Matt, but I think something that we often do is, like I said about my running goal, I didn't, you can just choose to believe something different. I didn't believe that I could run for various reasons. And the cool thing about like your beliefs is you can just choose, okay, today I'm going to live a different life. I'm going to choose a different belief. And, have you found that to also be possible, that you can just choose to one day to say, I'm going to choose something different?
Yes, it's possible. It's difficult. But yes, it's a choice that we make on a daily basis on what we're going to believe about ourselves, about our world, about the environment, about the choices we have. And yeah, you can choose a different belief, but you have to be very conscious of that, and you have to be very focused on choosing that new belief every day, because like we've talked about, your old beliefs have thousands of repetitions, thousands upon hundreds of thousands of repetitions over your life that have been stacking upon each other. And so they have the advantage. So then when you're bringing, and again, they're kind of now lodged into your subconscious. So now when you bring a new belief into that, it doesn't have those reps yet. And so you have to work extra hard to change that belief. And it is going to have to be a conscious choice for a while until you can shift that and really have that belief be anchored where the old belief that you're trying to change was.
Exactly.
But yes, we can change our beliefs, and I think like we talked about at the beginning, some of these have gone on for so long that we now just accept them, and now they're just part of our lives. And so it definitely takes a shift in your thinking to realize, well, no, I do have some more choice and more control over this than I realized.
Absolutely. So we'd love to hear your thoughts.
I think there was a question. I don't know if you can check.
Yeah. Okay, there was a question?
Or a comment.
Okay. So what about saying, Sarah says, what about saying I have the power to do this rather than I already am this? Absolutely. Make it something believable for you, Sarah. Like you said, you don't want to feel like that snake oil salesman on yourself. So that's where I was saying, try to speak truth over yourself, not just make it something believable. So if you can say, if you feel like, okay, I have the power to do XYZ, or I can choose to do XYZ once a day or once a week or once a month, then that makes it real and brings it into the present rather than just saying, I am healthy. And if you feel like, oh, I don't feel like I'm healthy, but you could say, I make healthy choices, and you could act on that. You could say, I make healthy choices. I'm good. And okay, I'm going to make a healthy choice right now. And by saying that, your brain says, oh, I want to make that true. And so it wants to confirm that. Whatever you tell it, it says, oh, I want to make that true. And so then you're going to make more healthy choices because you're saying, I make healthy choices, if that makes sense. So you can really help kind of trick your brain with this in a good way, but you always want to make it attainable and believable for yourself. Otherwise, yes, you're going to feel like you're a snake oil salesman on yourself. So, and Lori says, I love the concept of living out of your imagination and not your memory. And that's so true. You have the choice to create the future that you want, and you don't have full control over all the variables, but you have control over yourself, what you're going to think about, what you're going to focus on. And that's, especially as Christians, that's what we're asked to do. We're asked to think on good things, the fruits of the Spirit and things like that. And so that's so important in our everyday walk, that we think those things, and that plays right into what we're talking about. It's very, very much based on a biblical principle in that sense. And we do have a question from Lori. Can each of you share what you consider your greatest victory in this area?
Oh, goodness. It's, do you know off the top of your head what you would say?
You're springing it on us. So this is going to sound a little bit silly, but I had this one that I was saying to myself that I had heard from a particular book that I was reading. And it was every time they got in the car, they said, I will have a pleasant trip. And it felt really disingenuous at first, but I was like, I'm going to try it because I'm trying to do what they are suggesting because I haven't done it before. So I did this, and because I had a lot of anxiety, what if I break down, what if I get in an accident, all these different things, right? And so what was so cool was I started to realize, after I said it again and again and again and again and again, right, is it doesn't mean that the trip is going to be perfect. It doesn't mean I'm not going to get pulled over or have an accident or something bad isn't going to happen. What it means is my mindset can say, I'm having a pleasant trip. Even if I get in an accident, if everybody's okay, I can view it, okay, it's a pleasant trip because nobody got hurt. And looking at the positive, I can control what my mindset is when it comes to my trip, regardless of how, quote, good or bad objectively it goes. I can choose to view it through positive eyes. I hope that makes sense. But that was really helpful for me, especially in long trips and things like that. That was a good thing for my brain. That's just one example.
Yeah, I mean, this is a struggle. I still have a lot of work to do, but I would say one that comes to mind is probably during when I was training for the Spartan races, especially the 30-mile one. And constantly one of my mantras during that was be strong and courageous, or I'm strong and courageous. And that would be something I would repeat on my runs and training over and over. Of course, that's a reference to Joshua. But that was really empowering and really a powerful statement, and it became this almost, even when I was running, it became a cadence, and it became just this repetition that I could run to, and became so comfortable that I was really which is really kind of a cool thing, but my breath would be in sync with it, my body would be in sync with it, my steps would be in sync with it, and it just became this thing. And then when actually the race came, I mean, that was such a smooth, the race itself was so much easier in some ways than the actual training, because then your body is so primed for that, your mind is so primed and in sync. And like we were talking about, once you have all those senses, your breath, depending on what you're working on, your breath, your smell, your sight, everything can be in tune with it, and it can be a really powerful experience.
Yeah.
And I know we're a little over time. We wanted to try to stick to 30 minutes.
We're trying to keep this to 30 minutes.
I guess my closing things would be just to remember, we started out with, you have to live with yourself for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Do you want to have a good conversation or a bad conversation? Too often I've had a bad conversation, and like we talked about, you have to be very intentional with how you're talking to yourself. And really, if you haven't realized that, like that's something that you are talking to yourself all the time, try to think about it like a regular conversation you have with somebody
start
else.
being aware. Just
being
start
aware
listening to your thoughts.
Like, what are you, instead of thinking about, be aware, talk to yourself, answer those questions. If you question yourself, so if you're saying, I'm no good at this, well, no, so actually I am. I'm great at this. Because, like,
Challenge it.
Bring it out into the open. Bring it
you
out
don't have to believe everything you think.
Yeah, exactly. So just be thinking about how you're talking to yourself. You're going to have this relationship with you and really use that to begin to power that transformation.
And this is really truly how you start to build self-confidence, because when you start telling yourself a good story and you start believing it and you start acting on it and you start doing the things and keeping your word with yourself, that's like a recipe for building that self-confidence in a huge way. And then you're on your way to really reaching those goals that you want to reach. So I think that's all we had. But thank you guys so much for joining us. It was wonderful to spend some time with you, and feel free to,
if you have any questions or any questions about how we do this or anything we can do to help support you, just let us know in the comments.
Yeah. Have a great night, you guys.